Hello, friends, and welcome back to this week's episode of Embodied Healing Self. I'm your host, Jen Mons, and I am excited to share my guest speaker with you this week, my dear friend, relationship and intimacy coach, Tara Davis. Tara Davis is the creator of the Relationship Playbook for marriage, and she's a dear friend of mine. So I'm so excited to be sharing her with you today. Thank you, Tara, for being here.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Absolutely. I am too. So Tara and I met almost exactly, a year ago in person to the date. We were in a course together, and then we attended an event together for healers and coaches. And I think I speak for both of us when I say that we just had an instant connection, like that soul sister connection that you get when you meet certain people. We happened to be roommates, and we stayed up later than we should have, talking all night, and on a relationship that had just basically came to life. So
yes, I would agree. I was thinking it was love at first sight, no doubt.
Yeah, okay, well, I'm glad you said that. So as an intimacy expert, you are definitely the one to be able to call that out. And I felt the same way. So like a soul sister love at first sight for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I am so excited to have you on today because what I know to be true as a health and life coach is that connection, whether it be with a partner, a loved one, our children, friends, coworkers, connection and community, and that relationship that we have with other people is such an integral part of our well-being.
It is. And I've noticed when as women, we find ourselves sometimes in these places, whether it's a drop in our hormones or whatever it is, we find these places of wanting to go within on such an intimate level. And sometimes we block everyone out of our circle. And what happens is we actually, there's nothing wrong with, being quiet and going within and all of that. It's when it becomes that we start shutting everyone out, as we notice, our health starts to go down. We start to get sort of depressed. And again, not making any light of depression, but our mood starts to come down. When our mood starts to come down and we're not happy and we're not connecting, we're, in essence, sequestering ourselves. I know we can all relate to this part of I just need to not talk to anybody. More so than a weekend retreat, we really start to affect our health. And so the relationships that we have with our girlfriends, with our husbands, with our best friends, with our children are all such an integral part of our physical and mental well-being.
Yes, absolutely. And I love just even how you're using the word relationship, because even in the work that I do, I talk about having a healthy relationship with your health, with food. And one thing I know to be true that we talked about just before hopping on here is, one of the things that I commonly see is that the root cause of most women's underlying health conditions is not what we think it is. It's usually low self-worth, overwhelm, stress, and this can show up in some self-sabotaging habits, which may show up for some people in the work I do as their food choices. And I would imagine that for you as a relationship coach, maybe there's a common thread where some of our own inner awareness and feelings, the word intimacy, into me, I see, can show up in our relationships, because our relationships are often a reflection of how we're showing up in the relationship. So can you talk a little bit more about, actually, would you be willing to start just sharing your personal journey on your relationship and how it brought you to this place where you are mentoring other women where they are in their relationships and how it shows up for them in their own personal development?
I would love it. And I'm going to try to get through it without crying, because as soon as you asked me, I was all like, oh my God, the emotions are already coming up. So yes, I would love to share I will try to keep it I will keep it as brief as possible because it's been such an incredible journey that I didn't know I signed up for. So this year marks 25 years of marriage with my husband. And it's been such an amazingly interesting journey. When I first got married, it's so fun to share the reason why I got married because I was a single mom. I'd had a previous relationship and I had a child, and the guy wasn't even in my life anymore. So I was a single mom, and I had this child, and then George came along, my husband, and he was my brother's best friend in high school. And as soon as he started pursuing me, my brother was like, oh my God, having some issues. Well, anyway, my husband started pursuing me. We got married, but here's why I got married, because he was so good looking. He was so out of the box bad boy. And coming from a Catholic upbringing, like this was like so taboo, right? So that was uber attractive. I knew my parents would be like, oh my God, what are you going to be dating this guy for? There were so many reasons that I, quote, shouldn't have been dating him, which was exactly what attracted me to him. And to be quite honest with you, because I had a son and I was a single mom, I'm like, oh yeah, of course. Yes, he will totally help me take care of my son. Like those were the legit, real reasons why I married him. I mean, there was definitely an attraction, but all that other stuff came in with it. And so I can't not share that with you because they were all there. And so as our relationship continued, my husband was in the military for almost 25 years. And so throughout our marriage, he was gone for months and months and months and would be deployed for, year, 18 months. So there were so many times in our marriage that he was back and forth and in and out. And so I learned about 3 or 4 years in that I did not know how to be married anymore because he would leave, I would be in charge. He would come back, I would want him to take over right where he left off, but yet I wasn't willing to give up control because I knew exactly how everything worked. And, he was on the same spectrum of, well, I want to get right back into where I left off, but you're not letting me. And so it was this continual battle of wills because we're both very strong-willed. We're both leaders. And we there were just problems. And I thought, we need some help here. And so we continually throughout our marriage have sought out different therapists because again, we were moving every year to 2 years. And so that was a big shift every couple of years. And so it was so interesting because each time we shifted, I recognize now we would up-level therapists. They would meet us where we were. Right? And so each therapist would be a different vibration than the last therapist. And so we continually kept going with that. Well, in this, there were places where I started learning, wait, I matter. And when I started learning, because I did have really low self-esteem, even though outwardly I was presenting myself with I'm really a bubbly, positive person. And I love to be external and out in the world and have so much fun, but internal, my self-worth and my self-esteem was so low. And so that was an outward projection of what wasn't happening inward, right? Mm-hmm. And so when I started learning that actually internally, what I wanted mattered, because again, when you have low self-esteem, what you want doesn't really matter. It's what everybody else wants that matters. That's your thought process. And so when I started learning that and realizing that, oh, I do matter. Like I can have a say-so, it started rocking the boat because this had not been our pattern in our marriage up until this point. Not that it was a good or a bad thing. It just wasn't happening. I was making major shifts in how this relationship was working. And again, up until that point, he was playing off, acting to how I was showing up in the relationship. Mm-hmm. And it was me that started choosing to show up differently. He wasn't. And so, as you know, when one of you starts showing up differently and the other one hasn't signed up for it, it's this tumultuous thing of like, yeah, but I'm going to show up differently now, so you need to too. Mm-hmm. Well, it wasn't him that was choosing, right? So there was a point where I just decided, you know what, looking back now, the first time I tried to divorce my husband was from a place of ego of like, oh my God, I'm so on this path of self-love and self-reflection. And dude, you are not even there. We're just not even meant to be. I'm out. And so, and it was so funny now that I look back, it was so self-righteous. But in saying that, it was all I knew how to do because I was new to this taking care of myself thing. And I just knew that I had to take care of me. And something shifted within him after spending thousands of dollars with an attorney of like, oh, wait a minute. I do love you. I do love the kids. Let's figure out how to make this work. And we both came to that realization of like, yeah, we do love each other. And how do we make this work? So that was attempt number one. As if there are more. Actually, there were 3 more. So 3 more of these places. And it's so interesting looking back. We would, get to a point of, yeah, this is great for me. And I'm going to be forever until the day I die, a personal development junkie. Like I'm just on that path of learning for me. My husband, he'll come along, but it's not his end all be all, right? For me, it's just what I crave. It's what I thrive on.
That sounds perfect. He's there to support you and hold the space for you as you're on your journey.
Completely. And he does each time. And it's so funny that it's taken me this long to realize, oh, that's my jam. It's not his jam. And he just will sit back and just watch. I'm the one who squirms and says, but you got to come with me. Like, you got to do the same thing. When in fact, he doesn't. It's me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm really hearing this message of the awareness that our relationships, our connections with other people have a lot to teach us and show us about how we're showing up in the world. And I really want to honor and acknowledge you as a military wife. I'm the daughter of an Air Force colonel. I myself was in the reserves for 10 years. I went to a military academy, and I see you and I speak your language of, there is, and unless you've been there, you may not really understand the level of commitment that it takes to be the wife supporting your husband as you're moving, picking up and starting all over every year or every few years. I mean, that really is a lot. And it's, doesn't always feel super grounding either because you're constantly, yeah. So and it was also even an amazing gift at the same time because, maybe you were put on this path of all these experiences where you were just confronted with these things because every time you moved, like there was a whole nother layer to peel, right? So
it brings up something.
Was. Yeah.
Each time we moved, just as soon as we thought we were comfortable, bam, we were out again. Yeah. So it was that continual movement, that continual shift and change and unknown. Like the rug was pulled out every 2 years. Every year and a half, like the rug was pulled out from underneath us just as soon as we felt comfortable. And so, I mean, I think it's besides death and marriage, isn't moving like the number 3 most stressful thing in your life? We did this 14 times. And so all of this was a factor in our marriage. And I mean, I'm just sharing my story. There are so many other stories of people who didn't make it or people whose marriage were already rock solid. And so this is just my journey of checking in with myself. And you know what? Just as soon as I said that, a rock solid marriage, I don't know. I don't know what their marriage looked like on the inside. Right. And so I'm just sharing mine. And so each time we came to this place of, I think we're just done, it finally became a place of at the last time, which I think I'm done saying it to him anymore because there is such a place of realization of me just doing me. And at the same time, he gets to do him, whatever that looks like for him. We're just doing this together simultaneously as partners. It's like we have agreed that, oh yeah, I'm totally going to live my life. You're totally living your life. However it looks for either one of us without controlling. That's a big thing for me. I'm a real big control freak. No, I'm not anymore. I'm learning to let that go. And it's doing the journey simultaneously in a relationship, which I just want to say real quick, in the relationship, that's the biggest mirror for me.
Yeah, I hear that. One of the biggest gifts in marriage is having a person who witnesses your journey as you witness their journey. And I would imagine after 25 years, there have been many, many I mean, and I know, because I know some of them, there have been many, paths that have been a part of your journey. And, I think that that's really important to remember and check in with is like, we don't have to have an expectation of what it's supposed to look like or, and I think that we do this as women, especially in many different areas of our life. And I think that our relationship and marriage is another way that we can do this. We put this expectation on ourselves that it's supposed to be or look or
Mm,
feel a certain way. And, at the end of the day, as we talked about before we hopped on here, just like in the physical body, sometimes the healing is not about the cure, but the acceptance of where you are. I think that that also shows up in our relationships. And then we can remind ourselves that there is this co-creation, relationship co-creation with each other where we witness and reflect, which is really,
yes.
I really hear that coming through for you is this reflection in your own being. I hear you saying that a lot of your personal development in your life journey has shown up through your marriage. So,
100%.
which is probably why you're such a great relationship intimacy expert and coach. So, I want to ask you what in your life, in your marriage, your relationship, what has been the biggest breakthrough or aha moment? And I'm sure there have been many, maybe where
Mm.
you are right now, that you could share with the listeners, because I know 100% there are women and men listening who might be struggling with an area of their relationship, and who knows how that shows up. It's different for everybody. And maybe this is an invitation for them to kind of check in with themselves. Well, how, like, oh, maybe there's a way that I could look at my relationship differently on what it is showing me about me. So I want to ask you,
Hmm.
what was your most recent or your biggest aha breakthrough moment where you started to realize this pattern of your relationship showing up in a way that was for your own personal development?
Yes. So what is actually it's shifted as you when you first asked me that question. I mean, just in the 30 seconds that you've asked me, it already changed. So what my biggest piece of the journey for me is control, and it's so subtle. And I learned these behaviors. They're a definite learned behavior from those who were around me when I was growing up. I learned this early on as a child, first of all, as a safety mechanism to keep my world under control. I say that with quotes because we're never in control, but, in my thoughts, that kept me safe. In my marriage, I thought, well, this is what a marriage is supposed to look like. And I love that you brought that in because we all have this belief of what a marriage is supposed to look like. And it's supposed to look just like this, whatever that looks like for us. And anything other than that is not allowed. It's not acceptable. Like, we can't veer off the path. We can't get outside of the box. This is what a marriage is supposed to look like. And we try so hard to stick to that belief and to make sure that we are, still subscribing to that box. And it's so interesting that once I learned to let go of control and to get outside of my own box, and that my marriage can look like whatever I want it to look like. There was so much that went away. And this all ties into health too, because when we deny that intuition and deny that we want to try things differently, it seriously, 100% all the time will manifest in our body and in our health. As you well know, this is what you do, right? And so when we deny what our greatest inner truth is, however that shows up in our life, for me, it's in relationship. And so when we deny it, it's going to show up as, so many different diseases, inflictions, whatever it shows up as, because we are not speaking our truth. And for me, I learned to let go of the conventional idea of what a marriage was supposed to look like. So what that I've tried to divorce him four times. It's my relationship. It's not anyone else's. This is just what mine looks like. And so I have learned to let go of so much judgment. I have a friend who she's on her third marriage, and this marriage is delightful. She loves it. And she's also realized the other two were her training wheels, and we're figuring out what it was that she didn't want and what she did want until number three came along. But it's so taboo, almost taboo. It's becoming not to say, yeah, this is marriage number three. Because really, we know people in the background are like covering their mouth and saying, oh my God, this is her third marriage. It's that judgment and that control of wanting our life to look a certain way, wanting to project a certain thing, wanting to project a certain persona, because it comes back to that inner truth of, I might not be good enough. I might not be worthy. I might not be lovable. I might not be safe. Like all of these internal beliefs that we continually hang on to. And so for me, one of the key points was learning that I love to be in control of what this marriage looks like. When I let go of what I think it's supposed to look like and be okay and actually totally fine with saying, oh God, yeah, we've tried the divorce 4 times. Are you kidding me? When I'm okay with saying that, everything in my body relaxes.
Yeah. And I love how you brought up those 4 core beliefs, because those show up in how we choose to nourish ourselves. They show up in different relationships with food, with health, with our job. Those 4 beliefs will show up in other places. And I love how you tied it into how it shows up in relationships. So this idea, or how this shows up of this being in control, which belief is that a result of?
It's a belief that, for me personally, it shows up it kind of cross-pollinates. It's, I'm not lovable and I'm not good enough.
Yeah. So we're constantly, we think that if we're in control of the situation, then we're making ourselves look better.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Yes. And so also what is, and I will share this with you as well, what is up for me right now in my personal life is a shift in my business. And it's so interesting that I manifested a cold and a sore throat because I wasn't speaking from our throat, right? It's our throat chakra. It's our expression. It's our creativity. And when we block that, again, it shows up in an illness in our body. I manifested a really bad sore throat. Because I wasn't speaking my truth. And it's so fun because it's something that I coach women so passionately is, sister, speak your truth. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not even doing it.
What's that saying? What we're here to learn, we're here to teach.
Oh
right?
my God. And I say that to myself every day. I actually am in such gratitude for what I'm here to teach, because it's what I have to practice what I preach. And I say that with so much love. If I am not doing what I'm teaching, I'm out of alignment. And I know that. And so I hold myself to this certain expectation of, I've got to do this, because how can I expect anyone else to do it if I'm not doing it? And here's the best part, is that when I do it, I get like a gazillion downloads of what to share.
Yeah.
Of my experience of, oh my God, when I shared it, this is what happened. Like, it was such a relief. Or the exact opposite. It was really scary and I was afraid and like all of this happened, but I did it anyway. And here's the outcome. And so when I shared with my husband what was going on for me in my, right now in real life, I had no idea what his reaction was going to be, because this is something that I've shared with him several different times throughout our marriage. And I like his previous reaction was like, oh God, again. And so I didn't know. He's also doing a lot of his own internal work right now. And so he is definitely shifting and changing as a person. And so again, we are at this point of relearning what our relationship looks like, because he is really mindfully on a personal journey path, working with his own coach. And so I am having to let go of how I have shown up previously, because she's showing up differently. And so it's always been, again, this is part of the control thing. I used to be the one in control of the relationship. Like, I knew how it worked. I knew what was going to happen. I could predict what he was going to say when I would say this. Now the tables are turned, and he is really, really working on himself. And he will remind me, babe, I'm working. Like it's not how I do this anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
you keep holding back because you think I'm going to respond this way. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm continually finding myself going, right, we're in a different space. So he's
Yeah.
teaching me again how to show up.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. This co-creation again is creating space for each of you on your own path.
Mm.
And something that you said reminded me of something that I said recently, which is that awareness that many times our expectations are limiting
Yes.
of ourselves and of other people in relationships. And, as a parent, like in
Mm-hmm.
all of our relationships, it's a gentle reminder again of like, the final stage, at least for me, I know in the work that I do, whatever it is always in the surrender. We create
Yes.
these inspired action steps. We do the work, we heal, we recognize the self limiting belief or the, I'm not lovable, I'm not safe, I'm not good enough,
I'm not
whatever.
worthy.
I'm not worthy. Thank you. And these beliefs that come up, we do that. We do the work. We acknowledge it. We embrace it. Become, we work with it, and then we create a new path through inspired action steps based on what we currently value, based on where we are. And then the hardest part is to give it up, let
Let
it
go.
go, and trust. because it's not even about our own experience, right? It's so much bigger than just our own experience. And we're just talking about a co-creation of a relationship here. That's one experience, but then that has a ripple effect on your kids, your
Yes.
friends, their families. And then the ripple effect just keeps going out. So how we show up in one relationship is how we show up in many. And also what we create in a relationship goes way beyond just that relationship.
It does. And I love that you brought this surrender piece in because it's so funny how I tell so many stories in my head, right? I love the lead up that you just gave of the work that we do before we surrender. And as that lead up happens, I create a gazillion stories in my mind of my expectation of what it's going to look like on the other side, when in fact, the juiciest piece is when I surrender and let go and have no expectation because I have no idea what it's going to look like. It's almost as if you're jumping on the trampoline and jumping and jumping and jumping and jumping, and then you just let go. And then it's
Mm,
like, oh, I didn't even think about
yeah.
that. Like I never knew it could be this good. Like we hold on so tight, but it's in the letting go that's where all the miracles and the juice is, in the letting go.
Yeah. And I also think that there's this balance. I talk about this in a journey of health and wellness, but the balance of being and becoming, like that natural state of expansion and contraction that we see in nature is the same in our relationships. There
All the
will
time.
be times where we are in an expansive space and things are blissful and amazing, and because we've done our own self work. And then there's a time where we just got to come back in and just be present with what is. And
Mm.
um we often see, as you're seeing right now, like sometimes that shows up in a relationship, and then it shows up in our business, and then it shows up in our health, or it's all so integrated.
It is. And thank you for bringing up the contraction and expansion, because that will be a part of our lives from beginning to end. It will never not be contract and expand, because
Mm-hmm.
we learn. And it was so awesome. I got a couple of weeks ago when I was out walking or running, one of the two. Anyway, I was outside. And this image of the caterpillar kept coming into me. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then I was like, oh, God, wait a minute. I need to go home and look that up. And then actually what I heard was, you don't need to look it up. Just look at me, the caterpillar. And it's this complete contracting as it comes all in and tightens up and gets up. And then he expands, and then he slowly expands. And so I was like, oh my God, it's so poignant and so simple, this journey of a caterpillar. And when he is contracting, he's actually walking back over this new place. And then when he's expanding, he's releasing over places he's already been, but then coming back. And so our life, all of our relationships, our health is a continual contract and expand, because we
Mm-hmm.
learn and then we put it into action. And then we learn and then we put it into action. So yeah, to think of a blissful state we would all love to be in 24/7 till the end of the earth would be great. It's just not how it works.
Well, and most of the time, as you and I know, as personal development coaches in different ways, is that it's in those moments of contraction. So for you in your marriage, where on the other side is the most growth.
Oh, it is the most growth. And I would not have given up anything on my journey. I won't give it up. Like, it's part of me. It's part of my growth. If I were to have been that same person that married my husband, oh my gosh, my life would be so different. I would be a different person. I wouldn't have been challenged all these different ways through this relationship. It has been my biggest growth piece. Like, he's my biggest teacher on the planet by just being him.
I love
like whenever I say that to him, he's like, I don't do anything. I'm like, I know, that's just it. By just being you with every single imperfection that you bring to this relationship, that's how I've grown.
That's so wonderful. I love that. And that on a deeper level, let's just take that in. Like, just take that in. I know for me, that has shown up through my kids. My kids have been my biggest teachers. It was just my journey. And even then, my husband made an agreement on a soul's level, right? To be a part of that experience, just as your husband in some way had an agreement to show up in the way that he is for you as you are for him.
Yes.
Yeah. So what would you, okay, so, that's just like the beauty inside the mess, right? And this is our life experience. Like this, we are the authors creating our own life story, and we get to choose, like, what is going to come out on the other side? How are we going to remember this co-creation experience with this person I've been in a relationship with for 25 years? I've been through really good times and really difficult times. And I know that as we're speaking, there are listeners who may be in a contraction right now in their relationship. And maybe it's manifesting in their physical body. And I know this because this comes up in conversations with the women that I work with: the heart, the throat, thyroid, the throat chakra, the heart, really truly does start to manifest physically. Dis-ease, discomfort, the resistance in it. Really, it comes down to like seeing ourselves separate from the experience. Once we start to, when we're not present with what's really happening, because we're not checking in with our body, we're not really leaning into the contraction of the relationship, it can start to manifest and be very uncomfortable in the body. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it manifests outwardly in different ways in our relationships at work or with our children. We start to have like sideways emotional blow ups or something like that.
Yeah.
So the question I want to ask you for the listeners is that if someone is listening right now and is feeling in their core, in their gut, somewhere in their body, where they just have this intuitive knowing that they're in a contraction right now in their relationship, what would you say to this person with where they're at right now to begin to move forward?
Thank you for asking that question, because I can relate immediately. I've been in a contraction for the last week. I've been in contractions for months. And so I can absolutely relate to this piece. What I have learned, and here's what I share when people are in contraction, is to, sometimes it's easier said than done. Sometimes you're at the lowest point and it's super easy. It's to surrender. It's to let go of what you think it's supposed to look like. It's to let go of your expectation of, well, I know how this is going. I know where this is going. It's to let go of that. It's to ask for guidance. Ask for the purpose of what is the purpose of what I am going through right now? Why am I going through this? What am I supposed to be learning? So, and again, when we ask, then we got to let go. We just have to let go of how it shows up, because it might show up in some bizarre, crazy answer that you have never expected. And because you've got a certain expectation, you might not even see the answer.
Mm.
So when you ask this question, the universe is always going to show you. It's up to us to know how to listen. And knowing how to listen means letting go of what we think the answer is. Because again, when we think we know what the answer is, we're not going to see what the actual answer is. Because
Right.
if we ask for, I want a red this, and we're waiting for a red this, we're not going to see the brilliant, golden, whatever that shows up
Yeah.
because we're expecting it to be red.
Mhm.
And so when we let go, first of all, we let go, and it's almost like your shoulders just drop. So let go of any expectation. Logistically, here's what I do. This is what I do to help myself, because I find myself kind of having a lot of anxiety around that contraction of like, when is this going to be over? Am I doing this right? Like all this stuff comes in of doing a contraction right. Like there's any way to do it right. There's no way to do it right. It's our own journey. And so I journal, I meditate, I listen. For me, it's running. It's hiking. When I'm outside, I notice I get more answers because my head seems to be so much more clear. I just do yoga to release tension in my body. So for me, all of these help me to listen. They help me to lessen the
Mm.
anxiety in my body, because then here's what happens again on the health side. If I'm not doing these, oh my God, I will find whatever I need to eat. I will overshop. I will and then the tension starts to
Mm.
I just create so much shit around not letting go.
Yeah. And we start to seek the answers outside of us. Like
Yes, instead of just
the
listening.
shopping and the eating and
Yeah,
the
oh
or
God,
the
yeah.
blame. The
The
blame.
blame.
That's
The
another one.
blame is the quickest way to get outside yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So I want to talk intimacy.
Yes.
Into me I see.
Mm-hmm.
As it relates to a limiting self-belief that we have. And I'll quickly share what I noticed about myself is that
Mm-hmm.
my core belief subconsciously, no one would know on the outside, is that I'm not good enough. It's why I always had to prove myself, go to a military academy, be an engineer, finish the top of my class, overachiever, perfectionist. And in saying that, I know that I am 100% in love with my husband. And there are and have been times where the intimacy wasn't healthy because of how I felt I was showing up in the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I felt not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
So when I noticed I felt that way, because my husband is literally an earth angel, he's amazing. Everybody who meets him loves him. And so then I would be triggered again, right? I'd be, oh, he's an amazing father. I mean, like literally nobody can say anything bad about him, right?
So I'm not good enough because he's so good.
Right. And you have we've talked about this, like, good for me for, marrying such an amazing man. And what I notice is that how it shows up in me is, oh, now I don't even feel worthy. Sometimes I don't, although he's 100% in love with me, I know I am. And so I share this because, again, sometimes this shows up in a relationship with our job or health or whatever, but in a relationship with your partner, your marriage, however that shows up, what I noticed is that my own personal belief was creating a lack of intimacy in the relationship, or to the potential that it could be.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I finally realized that, then it started to heal that part of our relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is an important part of relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Intimate connections, we thrive energetically, spiritually, emotionally from intimate connections. A mother and a child, when the child is first born, like, this is all a part of our
Mm-hmm.
well-being. Can you share more about ways that our listeners can check in with themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Because I hear this a lot in the work that I do. What are some tips that listeners can check in with themselves if they know that their relationship is lacking intimacy and
Mm-hmm.
connection?
I love this question. And it is really it is one of the core pieces in relationship, because if the intimate connection isn't there, everything else is suffering, right? It becomes a superficial relationship. And so the intimacy, I love how you led into this with the intimacy, I see, because it is the intimacy in the relationship, the partnership between a man and a woman and a woman and a man and a man, that partnership relation, the intimacy is actually within ourselves first. And it was awesome when I was doing some webinars and I was talking about sex. It wasn't the women who came in and wanted to talk. It was the men, because truly what the men wanted, besides sex, besides that physical connection, they wanted more intimacy. And the way that we get more intimacy is by knowing ourselves first. Again, it's that piece that comes back into the internal piece, into me, because like we had just talked, when I am finger pointing and blaming you for the wrongs in our relationship, I'm not tuning in. Mm-hmm. And so when there is a lack of intimacy in our relationship, what I encourage people to do, women, men, is to look into themselves and see, where are they falling short? And I don't say that with judgment. I say that with love. Where are you falling short? Like, where is that for you? What can you look at? Is it a piece of, I don't feel like I'm worthy. I don't feel like I'm lovable. Like, I'm not even smart enough. My partner is so smart. Like, I feel dwarfed by this, genius that I'm married to. And so it's actually what we are bringing to the relationship that brings that void of intimacy that we have created, because we've used ourself almost from that egoic standpoint of, well, I'm not worthy. And I'm not even diminishing our feelings, but we've used that as our story to continually not show up. What it takes is a gazillion amounts of courage to show up and say, oh, this has been my story for 40 freaking years. I'm not good enough. And I am choosing to heal it. It takes so much courage and strength to say that and to acknowledge it, then to continue playing that story until the rest of our life. Because when we continue playing that story, that's the easy piece. And we'll stay in that hamster wheel of not creating intimacy because we don't know ourselves. When we make that choice to know ourselves, that's when that intimate, deep connection with our partner gets so juicy and yummy. Oh my God. The more that we know ourselves, the juicier our relationships get. And when you start to look at these little places in yourself, have so much compassion and kindness with yourself, because this may be the first time that you're looking inward, and maybe things show up that you've never even realized were there. So I just encourage so much compassion. Maybe you need to take baby steps. Maybe you need to take nano baby steps, like super duper baby steps. Maybe you can go faster. Whatever it is your personal journey. Don't judge it. Don't have an expectation of it. Just start looking in and healing with compassion and without judgment.
Yeah. Thank you for that. The self-compassion piece is the most important.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. And like I said earlier, when it comes to the physical body, sometimes the healing in the body is not about the cure. It's in the acceptance of where you are.
Yeah, it is. And I've known so many people, that have gone through cancer, and I want to share so much, but they don't ask. And so I don't share, because I don't want to just, force, like, oh God, let's look at this piece. Let's look at this piece. Like, let's try to figure out where this came from and how can we heal this within you. But it's just that intimate examination of what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Really like leaning in. It is most important during those times of contraction. Mm-hmm. When we want to escape, when we want to be in the ease of the story that's identified us for so long, or, maybe some of us aren't even willing to even be with the story in the first place. Or then once we get there, we're totally identified by it because maybe it served us. It always does at some point, right? That's why we adopt a belief.
Right.
We all have a story that we came out, got us to where we are, and either good or bad, whatever. And yeah, you're right. Like sometimes that shows up as a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
because it's familiar. And then once we're ready to step out again, and one of my beliefs is that vulnerability is where your potential is. When you
Oh,
are ready to step up again, you've been beat down, you whatever, and then you're like, yeah, okay, I'm ready for the next. Like how much courage do you have to step outside of your safe zone, your story, your
mm-hmm.
whatever? So yeah, that's so true. It's
Oh,
amazing.
it is. And it is. I will say there's never not been a scary place for me when I've stepped out of my comfort zone and stepped out of my box. It's always been scary.
Yeah.
Cannot, yeah.
And you offer space for women to explore this through your retreats.
Oh, I
So
do.
would you be willing to share, because I know you just had one, would you be willing to
Yes.
share a little bit just about what that looks like and how our listeners can find out more information on that? And I know from my own personal experience that the most transformational experience that I have personally been a part of have been experiential retreat type things where you show up. If you're an all or nothing type of person, if you know you're going to show up and go all in, and you can separate yourself from your what's happening at home and show up, these types of retreats can be so transformational. And you offer a space for
Mm-hmm.
this type of work. Can you tell me a little bit more about that, who it's for, what they'll get out of it?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. So my retreats are very intimate. I went into this thinking I was going to hold really big retreats and I could hold space for a lot of women. And what I was quickly shown once I got out of my own way and let go of my expectations was I am here to hold intimate space. And so 2 to 3 women, maybe four. Four is a max limit of the transformation because we dive in deep. And you're right, they literally just show up. We live in the mountains, and so I have found several different cabins up in the mountains that are just brilliant. We show up, the food is taken care of, everything is taken care of, and all we have to do is show up and let go. Let go. And we dive in deep into all of our beliefs, our patterns. We see what's no longer serving us. And the women who this is for is women who have been on this journey for a while or brand new, but know that there is something way bigger out there. And yes, I'm willing to dive in. It's not for women who just kind of want to dabble, because we go way beyond dabbling. We really dive in. And the support that creates this circle of sisterhood is so fantastic. I just want to share, it was so amazing in my last retreat. There were 3 of us. There were 2 women and myself. And we all throughout the weekend, the 3-day space that we created, had said throughout a different, space throughout the weekend, can you just feel like the collective sisterhood supporting this space? And it was so tangible. Like we could feel the collective of sisterhood on the planet supporting our diving.
Mm.
And it was so transformational. The women have just, we had our wrap up yesterday. We have a wrap up 1 week later and then 1 month later. And so our last monthly wrap up was yesterday. And they're still unfolding from everything that they dove into. We do a lot of inner child work,
Mm.
which is super transformational. And we talk to that inner child 3 to 4 times a day. We check in because the transformation is so deep. And so if this speaks to you, I encourage you to go to my website. It is the Relationship Playbook for Marriage.com. Our next retreat is going to be, I'm still working on the details, in July. And again, it will be 2 to 3 women, maybe 4 if that's what comes in. I'm really learning quickly to let go of what I think it's supposed to look like. Because when I let go, that's when all the magic happens. And so I say 2 to 3, maybe this one's 12, who knows? I just know that transformation is in a small amount because we really get to listen to each other in that deep space. So the information will be up. If you want to contact me, please send me a note. You can find all of my social media on my website. You can direct message me. You can send me a note. I just love the chat. I love to open up the space to feel into what you're ready to unfold into.
Well, Tara, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you. I love this space to
Absolutely.
share.
And you're just radiating light and vibrance as you
Mm.
speak about this. It's I can really see that these retreats are something that are very special
Mm-hmm.
space to be in. And as you were speaking, I heard this message, this reminder that our healing is so much more than just our own personal experience.
Oh, it's global. It's
It
so global.
it extends into your relationship, your marriage first, right? That
Right.
might be why we show up to this retreat. And then that extends to maybe your kids or your friends and their relationships, maybe
Mm-hmm.
your parents. Like it's just it goes so many ways. And yes, globally, because this is a part of our healing journey. When we are supported and loved in a co-creation, in an experience with a partner,
Mm-hmm.
we can do anything. Like we
Oh,
are even more limitless.
yes.
And it is a part of our well-being, and it's there to teach us and to guide us and to support us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love as you were talking, I was just thinking of the three of us at this retreat. They are my sisters. They will never until from this day forward not be my sisters now because we have dove in at such a deep level that only women know how to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that we crave that. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that men do too. And
Mm-hmm.
that might look differently. So are your retreats for women only?
Currently, they are. I thought I was going to go in and do couples, but what just keeps coming to me is that's who I'm here to serve in a relationship is the women.
And how particularly we as individuals show up in that
Hmm.
relationship. Yeah.
Yes, because it's for ourselves first. We're showing up for ourselves first in the relationship. Because
And
showing
that's
up for somebody else,
healthy. That
yeah.
is a healthy space to be in. So I love how all of this ties into like our health and well-being because
Mhm.
some mothers lose themselves in their identity, or some women in their identity in their work. Some women lose themselves in their identity as a mother, and some as a wife. And
Hmm.
so, and this may or may not speak to the listeners out there, but it is a way that we can lean into it and listen. So if this is not the experience that I want, how is it that I'm not showing up that is not serving me?
Hmm. And we all know that little piece of intuition that speaks, that little bitty whisper in the back of our mind that wants something different. And so if it's speaking to you, I really encourage you to listen and see what that is. Give it a voice because sometimes we've dampened it and numbed it for so long, we've forgotten what it even feels like or sounds like, and it's just that little whisper that keeps knocking or just keeps talking to us that we shove and shove and shove. So I just invite you to start allowing it to come forward a little bit more each time, and then finally give it a voice. Write it down, say it out loud, whatever it is, and then just look at it and see what it says to you.
I love that.
Mm.
I love that. That's such a perfect note to end on. So
This has
thank
been
you.
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's such an honor to witness you as a friend, just, taking this experience and offering it to women in the world for their own healing. So it's
Mm.
been such an honor. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining with
Oh,
me.
thank
And
you.
I will be putting those links in the show notes. So for those of you that didn't hear, don't worry. Or if you didn't write it down, the links to her website, her retreats, and social media connections will be in the show notes as well. So, all right. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining in. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, Tara. Love
Thank
to
you.
you.
Love you.
Aloha.